高畑監督がまずかぐや姫でどんな映画を作ろうとしているのかっていう
そんなの分かるわけないですね。
The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. When you think about Studio Ghibli, the first thing your mind will most likely go to is Hayao Miyazaki and his filmography of some of the greatest animated features ever made. And I don't blame anyone for thinking that. They deserve to be praised for their legendary legacy. But Studio Ghibli is not just about Hayao Miyazaki. Some may not be familiar with the studio's other filmmaking founder, Isao Takahata, whose directorial contributions can be as admired as Miyazaki, such as Grave of the Fireflies, Only Yesterday, Pom Poko, and My Neighbor the Yamadas. But then several years after the Yamadas, just when he thought he was done with feature animation, producer Yoshiaki Nishimura convinced the elder director to come out of retirement and create one more movie. In that case, there was a project that he had in mind since the 1960s that he could finally bring to life, which was an adaptation of Japan's oldest folk story, The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter. It took 8 years to go through the chaotic production, but by the time Princess Kaguya was finished, it was celebrated with great praise from critics, was a strong contender during awards season, including getting an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature, and most notably, it was marked as a fitting finale for Takahata, as this, along with the Red Turtle that he produced a few years later, were his last contributions before he passed away in 2018. But as much respect as this picture has for its historical context, how does it hold on its own? While this is different than your typical Studio Ghibli film, is the movie as beautiful as the princess herself? Or should we send this feature to the moon? Let's find out. The story. While it's been told in many different ways throughout the centuries, Isao Takahata's version of this tale is about the life of a girl named Princess, whom fate made her go from being a common country girl to a noble royal living in luxury. However, despite all the riches that's being continuously handed to her, all she wants is to have a simple life and enjoy the little things around her with the people she grew up with.
I also saw when they beat you up.
Oh, that? That was nothing.
It's nothing if you answer back. Answer back by simply being alive.
Despite being a 21st century movie, the storytelling does a great job to maintain the spirit of its roots, keeping the feeling that this is an old tale. And this is not just because of its ancient Japan setting and that hard work the film did to have it play a role in its immersion, but also it has the bamboo cutter's wife step in from time to time to be the narrator, explaining some of the key moments like how it's been told for many years.
One day, he noticed a light shining from inside a bamboo stalk. Curious, the bamboo cutter approached it.
However, what does make this a bit more of a modern take on the story is how it is told from the perspective of the princess, making this a bit more of a slice-of-life type of film. Unlike its source material, the focus is not about her royal lifestyle or how she's impossible to impress for her suitors, but rather her emotions throughout her life. How she began to experience the world around her in a small village, but then suddenly her life turns upside down when she has to become a princess and is demanded to maintain this image of something that is unlike her personality. Of course, I'll be looking more into this later when I'll talk about her in full, but the feature is like a character study of someone who has little control of their own life. Once she became a princess, she has little to no opportunities to make her own decisions for herself, thus turning her life into a tragedy where it presents the never-ending clash of what she wants versus what she should do as a princess.
Would she have been just like all the others? Plucked from the field like a flower and then thrown away?
By the way, there is an interesting fact that's worth noting about this picture. This is one of the longest animated features ever produced with a total running time of 2 hours and 17 minutes. And I wouldn't say that this is the movie's biggest problem, but it is its biggest double-edged sword. On one hand, it's an aspect that makes the movie quite impressive. The The fact that an animated movie can make itself compelling from beginning to end for over 2 hours is an admirable accomplishment. Again, the storytelling did a decent job to be engaging in its own unique way to have the viewer see the tale of a princess who doesn't want to be one. Then again, I'd hesitate to say that it did a great job, and there are times when the movie's length took its toll. I understand that it's difficult to stretch an old folktale for over 2 hours and still make it all interesting. But it does happen when the film runs out of things to say and ends up repeating how Princess would rather live in the small village instead of being a royal in the capital.
It's all fake and so am I. So am I. It's fake.
Stop it!
Also, as it spends a lot of time on Princess and her emotionally tragic royal life, this ends up giving less space to the film's fantasy elements. I know that the surrealism isn't the point of the picture, especially with the plot and its protagonist being very down to earth, no pun intended, but those fantastical components like how she's from the moon and her astonishingly fast growth is an essential part to the original story. Yet in this movie, while it wants to stay true to the source material, the supernatural elements become an afterthought, and whenever they do appear, they feel sudden and a bit out of place. And partly due to the running time, I often forget that this is supposed to be a fantasy film and get caught off guard when Princess does something extraordinary, especially during the last 30 minutes when it doubles down on it.
Oh heaven. Oh earth.
I fly now? That's fly now!
But maybe some consider this to be a bit of a nitpick, and I'll admit that is fair to say. But to turn things around, there is a core component to this story that makes the whole thing work. There are many ways that people can interpret what this movie is about. Yes, there are several subjects of social commentaries that can be found, such as classism, where it criticizes how a rich and noble life is not a satisfying or an honorable one, and feminism as it calls out traditional values for hindering women from living their own lives and making their own choices. But my biggest takeaway from this film is its message of what it means to be happy. It's the kind of moral that feels like it would come from an old story like The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, as it presents how happiness doesn't come from riches or being among the upper class, but to live your life to the fullest with the simple things, where you have adventures with your friends and having the freedom to explore the world around you. Some may think that being rich and noble would give you more joy and freedom, but Princess is the epitome of money doesn't buy you happiness.
It hardly matters, because with any of these fine princely men, you will be happy forever and ever.
I'm supposed to feel happy?
I'd hesitate to say that this is a perfect adaptation. Yes, it can be a bit too long, and it can cause the fantasy elements to be forgotten to the point of being a bit out of place, but it still manages to not just tell a solid and emotional story, but to make it feel like a classic tale as well. The animation. What's important to note about Isao Takahata is that he's one of those filmmakers who broke the rules of animation. He saw the traditional system that Studio Ghibli made their films with cells and said, how about we not do that and try something completely different? He loved to take risks, but they didn't work all the time, and they always lead to headaches for the producers and the productions to be a nightmare. In fact, that's a major part to why after My Neighbor the Yamadas became a disaster for the studio, Takahata never released another movie for 14 years. And in the case of The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, it certainly looks different compared to Ghibli's other films, but the results are beautiful. As the animators had to strictly copy what directing animator Osamu Tanabe did in his storyboards, the style is reminiscent to classic Japanese artwork, fully showing off its craftsmanship with how the lines are drawn on the characters, how the backgrounds are painted, and how the designs are meant to convey that kind of look that you'd find in art pieces that were made around the time when the folktale was first told. When you look at the animation itself, It's definitely simple, especially when compared to other Studio Ghibli films. With the way it used a limited amount of lines, keeping the colors basic with minimal use of lights and shadows, and the backgrounds often having some empty spaces, it's the kind of film that really embraces its own simplicity. And yet, this is the perfect example of how simple can be very complicated. It's the kind of minimalism that requires great skills in order to master and to make it look as good as it does. Yes, the characters don't have to worry about shading or have detailed designs, but their movements are still in that high caliber like the other Ghibli films by having that present realism, even pulling off some of the trickier parts well by animating simple everyday actions.
日常の中の無意識の動きこそ実感のこもったアニメーションにするのが難しいという。人間の動きの機微を捉え描写する。それによってアニメーションに実感を伴ったリアリティを与える。
As for the backgrounds, yes, they were all done with watercolors, and watercolor backgrounds have been a thing since the beginning of animation. But in this case, they're a big contribution to the film's handcrafted style, and the white empty space is only carefully included to be part of the lighting and to help bring the eye to what needs the attention. And of course, I cannot forget to include how they greatly convey the setting of ancient Japan and its different environments, from the village that is dominated by nature to the colorful mansion where the family resides in royalty. Even the way the lines themselves are drawn are carefully done to get the look right. They have to make sure that they can capture the image of what they're meant to be while also staying true to the movie's style. This is especially admirable when looking at the effects, making sure they find that right balance while adding that magic to the picture, like with Princess's long flowing hair, fire, and the image of a dragon during a storm. There was even one cool moment to capture the mood of the moment when Princess ran away to convey her anger. With all of this coming together, the animation is one of the biggest contributors to capturing that immersion of being in historical Japan. But if I may sidetrack for a bit, I want to take the time to also mention another element that did the same thing, and that is the music. As it is another Studio Ghibli film composed by Joe Hisaishi, you know that the soundtrack is going to be amazing, capturing the right balance of traditional Japanese music and Princess's mood throughout her life. Like some of Takahata's other animated works, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya has one of the most unique animations from the studio. However, with how it perfected the art of simplicity and putting the craftsmanship in full display, it found a direct way to reach its own top-level standard, resulting in some of the best animation from the director. The characters. As you may have noticed throughout this review, I watched the English dub to analyze the film. However, I also saw the Japanese sub before, and I'll say that the dub is solid on its own with some good performances, especially from Chloe Grace Moretz as the titular character.
I had to know what those feelings from Earth were. That's why I broke the rules to come to this place. I wanted to feel all the same things that she felt, and now I know exactly what she was feeling as she looked back at this land.
I know that everyone has their own preferences, and in the case of this movie, you can't go wrong with one or the other, so feel free to stick with what you're most comfortable with. However, if I had to make a choice of which I'd prefer to watch, I'd go with the Japanese sub. First, because while the English actors did well, the Japanese let out a lot more emotion to their performances, which helps to make the scenes more impactful.
Come on, princess. Princess, come here. Princess, come here. Princess, come here. Uh-huh. That's my girl.
Also, Also, I find that the characters speaking in Japanese makes the movie more immersive. I mean, this film wants to be as authentic to ancient Japan as possible with its story, its setting, its music, and even its art style with the animation. Why not have that extra layer of the character speaking the language to fully capture the feeling that this is a completely Japanese movie? Otherwise, you'll have everything be as faithful to the country from centuries ago, and then the characters open their mouths and be like, "Hello, I am the Emperor of Japan. You could tell that I represent the land by my authentic accent. This is what everybody sounds like in this Asian country." But to discuss about the characters of the film, I'll have to mainly talk about who this tale is about, Princess Kaguya. You may have also noticed that I've referred to her as just Princess instead of calling her Kaguya. Well, Princess is what her parents have called her throughout her entire life and nothing else, which technically makes it her actual name. Kaguya is the name given to her for her royal status.
So then I add a name for Princess of the Shining Light, and thus I suggest to you the name Princess Kaguya.
But back to Princess herself, her biggest goal is to be happy, which is a far more difficult task than it sounds. She received her first taste of it during her childhood when she went out with the other kids in the village like Stemaru. But then once she has to leave her old home and fulfill her role as an actual princess, her joy of living life was left behind. She holds no value to the concept of social classes or wealth, which makes the role of a princess meaningless to her and exposes the problems that come with it.
Surely they want to cry or get mad and want to scream.
Oh no, a noble princess should never show
Then
her...
a noble princess is not human.
Even when she may try to commit her duties as a princess, she spends most of her time trying to recapture that happiness she once had. The only times when she can be happy is whenever she's out of the mansion and able to be free to enjoy the world. It's just that her princess status keeps her caged from being treated like anyone else. As much as her life is an example of money doesn't buy happiness, she also exemplifies how wealth, especially for a woman, can come at the cost of your freedom.
What have I been doing here in this land? Throwing tantrums because I didn't want to belong to anyone?
Alongside Princess are her parents, the bamboo cutter and his wife, who are played by James Caan and Mary Steenburgen respectively in the English dub. Just thought I'd mention that because it's cute how the parents from Elf reunited for this movie. Anyways, as the wife is Princess's emotional support who understands more of her actual needs, the bamboo cutter is the one who's driven by his wrong approach to happiness. He believes that more money and a higher social rank would mean a better life for his family, and drags his daughter along in order to make that happen. However, this is not to say that he's the movie's villain. He's just misguided by faith, believing that the magical gifts bestowed upon him were signs from the heavens to provide his family with the best life he can offer. The only problem is that he went with the common perception of what can make someone happy, not realizing that Princess had a different idea.
We live in a much different world than those hillbillies back in our old village. This banquet will make you a truly noble princess.
As for the other characters, their roles are to emphasize what their social status can offer to Princess, such as the 5 suitors who want to win her like a trophy, Lady Sagami who teaches her how to be a princess but struggles with dealing with her rebelliousness, and Stemaru, who symbolizes Princess's past when she was at her happiest.
All that time I was wishing I was here on the mountain, playing with everyone.
Well, everyone's gonna be here soon.
And with you, Stemaru.
Even though this primarily focuses on one character, and does so amazingly well, the film also provides a cast that adds that extra spice to both expand her personality and help make the message shine clearer. Not everyone in this movie is happy, but I'm happy with how they turned out here. As this is the last film from Isao Takahata before he passed away, his career ended off with an amazing finale. The Tale of the Princess Kaguya is an animated film that is as beautiful as the titular princess herself. With an emotional story that feels both modern and traditional, a powerful message about what is happiness, wonderfully stylized animation, and unforgettable characters that well represent their social class, they all come together to deliver one of the best adaptations of the classic Japanese folktale. Maybe the running time is a little too long to the point of making itself a bit repetitive, but that can easily be overlooked to appreciate the craftsmanship of this picture. Like many of the works from Studio Ghibli, this is a must-watch for movie fans and animation fans, along with those who are interested in Japanese history and culture to have a taste of that time period in Japan. Or better yet, I recommend that you get the movie on Blu-ray and DVD so that you can also watch the feature documentary on how the film was created called Isao Takahata and the Tale of the Princess Kaguya, which not only highlights what happened during the film's production, but is a great insight on Takahata himself and how his unconventional approach to animation can be both a detriment to the Studio Ghibli team and what defines him as an underrated filmmaker. Also, if you enjoyed this review, then how about giving this a like and subscribe to my channel? My silly little videos about animation can make you as happy as Princess in Her Old Village. Maybe some could debate if this is Takahata's best movie, but I certainly consider this to be one of his best. And that's why I'm giving this the Animat seal of approval. For a film that speaks against those with great wealth, it certainly is rich in cinematic artistry. Hey guys, this is Animat, and may I say, what a beautiful film that we have witnessed here. And not only that, but I do believe that the Tale of the Princess Kaguya really is a testament to how underrated of a filmmaker Isao Takahata is. Now, when it comes to Studio Ghibli, like I said at the beginning of this review, many people associate the studio with the works of Hayao Miyazaki. And I mean, I don't blame them because Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli really do go hand in hand. But there are those people, though, that would have some difficulties to think about any other filmmaker who actually made a movie at Studio Ghibli that is not Hayao Miyazaki. Like, often they'll just think about that one guy and then that's it. But when it comes to Isao Takahata, though, not only has he done a bunch of movies with Studio Ghibli, and not to mention that he is one of the co-founders alongside Miyazaki and Toshio Suzuki, but also his works are also fantastic as well. They really are the kind that can be just about on par with the works of Hayao Miyazaki. And even I do have some personal favorites. Like, I really do enjoy Pompoko. That one is surprisingly a lot of fun to watch. And then there's also what is debatably Takahata's most famous work, Grave of the Fireflies. And that movie, I won't deny, it is absolutely wonderful, but I will say it doesn't have much rewatchability value. And I'm not saying that to go and criticize the film, it's just that, as you probably know, Grave of the Fireflies is a very, very heavy movie, and definitely not as fun to watch as either Pompoko or even The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. Like, you need to really get emotionally prepared to go and watch Grave of the Fireflies. And if you want to go another round, then you have to learn to go and like really collect yourself, spend a few weeks to make sure that you're ready, and then you can get back into that one. But yeah, overall though, this is just to say that the works of Isao Takahata honestly, I feel like should be appreciated more. And I do understand there are some controversial aspects about Takahata, especially with the kind of work ethic that he would put onto his productions. I am aware that they are very controversial and they often lead to nightmares for the animators and stuff like that. But still, though, when it comes to the end results that he has produced, they definitely are wonderful. So, in a way, this is just to go and give a special little highlight to Isao Takahata because I believe he absolutely deserves it just about as much as Hayao Miyazaki. Alright, so now with that said and done, it is now time that we shall go and move on to a Patreon request. And this time around, we're going to be looking into a request from Jerry McRory. So, I would just like to go and say that if you would like to be like Jerry and you want to go and support my work and get some amazing rewards, including but not limited to watching my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. But at the same time, if you would like to request an animated film you would like me to review and that I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is go to Patreon, or not Patreon, all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. Alright, so with that said, what is it that Jerry asked me to go and take a look at? Well, in this case here, maybe this is not going to be something that is as beautiful as the tale of the Princess Kaguya, but this is going to be pretty crazy. Especially with the fact that we're going to be celebrating the holidays. But this won't just be any little holiday special. Like, we're not just going to go and celebrate Christmas like in the traditional way. We're going to do it with a special little studio that maybe you have heard of by the name of Mondo. And if you're familiar with Mondo, then let me just say, brace yourselves, because when I say that this is going to be crazy, yeah, you better believe it.
We should at least reward the artisans. They really did quite a nice job with that branch.